welcome to Rumpled Trenchcoat, a Columbo podcast for all your Columbo needs. I'm Rich Nocella, and I'm here with my sister,
Adrienne Nocella.
And this week's episode is Suitable for Framing in 1971, guest starring Ross Martin as Dale Kingston, a famous art critic, Rosanna Huffman as Tracy O'Connor, his accomplice, Don Amici as an estate lawyer, Frank Simpson, and Kim Hunter as Roddy McDowell in drag. Otherwise known as
100%.
So I'll state right off the bat, this is really my favorite episode of Columbo for reasons that we're probably going to go into. But let's just start right off here at 14 minutes BC. A famous art critic, Dale Kingston, murders his uncle as part of an elaborate plan to inherit his uncle's art collection. Let's jump in here because they start right off with one of my favorite things. First of all, the murder takes place in less than a minute.
I love that. It basically opens with his uncle playing Chopin on the piano. I don't know. I think that's what he's playing.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of the piece, but it was one of my favorite pieces of music. So another reason to hate the killer for interrupting it.
He's like jauntily playing this.
Yeah.
Yes, he's like jauntily playing the piano. There's a little grin, and then he's immediately murdered. Is it 60 seconds? I feel like it could even be less than that.
It was definitely under a minute. Definitely under a minute.
This has to be really one of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No. Dale basically just walks in with his hands behind his back, pulls out a gun after that nice little smile, and just shoots his uncle. That's it. Boom. Immediately. Within 1 minute.
And I wonder if this episode is the fastest murder. I wonder of all seasons, I wonder if there's any that's even like at 30 seconds. Basically those bold yellow font credits stop. And then there's immediate murder. Is there anything sooner than this one?
No, there's not. And also this is the only one where the victim doesn't have any speaking lines. The victim is just playing the piano. And then just blam, gets shot.
So that poor actor doesn't even get like comped for this in a way that other actors, like he's like an extra basically.
He basically is, although he is actually a B movie star. Yeah, he was I think he was the detective in maybe the Superman TV show, I think. Oh. But I'll have to.
So that guy got dressed, wore a fancy vertically striped robe. I'm not sure what he was wearing. I don't know if it was like a smoking jacket, just to show up and immediately get murdered.
Yes.
By a man in a shag haircut. that was like the hair game is strong in this episode. 1971. The hair / caftan game is strong in this episode.
Lots of ruffled shirts because the killer is definitely kind of an elitist. I won't go quite so far as to say fop, but boy is he darn close to being a fop.
You know what? He does start on that line. He's very close. Not quite there. I agree.
No, because he's a little too masculine to be a fop, but he absolutely has all those ruffled shirts. Yes, and he has all of the arrogance. So this one of the reasons why I like this, and it's tough to even admit that one of my favorite episodes doesn't have Jack Cassidy or Robert Culp or Patrick McGowan as the murderer, because it seems almost sacrilegious. But this really is one of my favorites. Ross Martin plays Dale Kingston, who is just so wonderfully arrogant and obnoxious. And we'll, I guess, go into that a little bit. Just the start of this, he shoots him immediately. So it's off to a great start. We're just like, hey, here we go. Blam, you did.
It's like you're starting the races. You're starting it with a gunshot. It's like, here we go.
That's right. We're off to the races. Blam. And so he tosses a heating blanket on him to throw off the time of death, because that's kind of what his plan is. He wants to shoot his uncle, alter the time of death so that he can have an alibi by going to an art gallery party. And
he uses the electric blanket to keep the body warm. To throw off the coroner's report, the time of death. Yeah. So what struck me here is that in 40-something years, the electric blanket is still the same. It has not improved at all. Right. I look at that electric blanket. Identical. I have the same exact one in my attic. I mean, in my upstairs closet, linen closet. The exact same one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't buy it in 1971. I bought it like 5 years ago.
Right. No. It's a heating blanket technology was perfected, I guess, the moment it was invented.
Yes.
And there was really nothing else. It's just, here's a blanket, it gets hot, what do you want from us?
And plug it in. Yeah, maybe I'd like some Bluetooth capability at this point. Maybe there should be some aromatherapy. I don't know. But it's the exact same one I have with that stupid white dial with a needle. Literally the exact same thing.
Yeah. You just slide it over and it's like, why not a push button? Yeah, why not a push button at this point? Yes. Why does it have to be that rheostat dial?
That's exactly what it is.
So as soon as he does that, then he does one of my favorite things again. It's just to try and make it look like there was a struggle and that his uncle got shot accidentally. And this is just my favorite thing because it's like, how much, I mean, were there pro wrestlers involved? Every time anyone tries to stage a fight scene, it's like the entire room is torn apart. This is a man who's clearly in his late 60s, early 70s, who's been shot. And there are tables flipped over. There's, again, I don't know how many fights have actually occurred in a home with an intruder, but I don't know how many of them involve somebody putting their arm down on one end of the desk and sliding it across the desk to knock everything onto the floor.
It makes no sense. I actually did want to bring up the trashing of the house because it's so over the top in this episode in particular, where I did think about that because one was was Dale's intent to show that there was a struggle with the victim, or was it I am frantically looking for things to steal? Either way, I don't know why you would clear off a desk in that manner, because anything on top of the desk you could see. There's no reason to knock it over. Right. None.
Yeah. And I don't think so, because the idea is in an entirely different room of the house, you have about $5 million worth of art. You're not going to search a desk for a necklace. So the idea was that the uncle's gun was kept in that room where the struggle took place, and that somehow they wound up back in the room with the art to get the gun. This is actually just kind of a huge flaw in this entire episode plan. There was no need to make it look like there was a struggle. What he could have done was he could have pretended the uncle went to the other room, got the gun, and surprised the burglar, and maybe they had a fight in that room.
Right.
But the way it happens makes no sense for there to be the fight scene in a different room of the house. It just doesn't make sense. And again, the magnitude of the fight, he's throwing books off a shelf. What kind of fun? I mean, unless you're throwing them at your assailant, why would books ever come off a shelf? And the actor even had a hard time getting some of the books off.
I saw that.
He was struggling with it. He was trying to pull it out of the.
I was trying to say those looked like the Encyclopedia Britannica set. I know it's not, but it was all leather bound, and it looked like those Encyclopedia Britannica sets. And he was pulling each one off, and he did struggle with them. And I was just laughing at that entire thing because I'm like, if you're looking for a necklace, you're not going to look in the bookshelf. And if you're just fighting with someone, again, unless you're actively throwing books at each other, why would you do that if there's a gun? None of that's going to happen. So it's
None
just
of that's going to happen.
I don't know why that happens.
I don't know, but they do it in every episode where there's a fight, or there's supposed to be a fight or a staged fight scene. It's just like if the Undertaker and Hulk Hogan were just going at it for 10 minutes in the room. It's just
true,
insane.
and it's not exclusive to Columbo. It's Law & Order. It's every show ever. They have that. And by the way, I've known people who have had a home invasion when they weren't home, and really half the time they don't even notice that they were robbed until they notice some things are missing, and there's like then they see their screen was pushed out.
Right.
You know, so it's pretty tame.
It's usually pretty subtle. Yeah. Because usually the person's going in, they're taking what they wanted to take, and they wanted to leave. So right off the bat, there's that odd business there that I still, even in defending the episode, I can't quite defend that. Either the person broke in, started taking art off the wall, and was surprised by the uncle, and maybe he chased the uncle into the other room, worrying he was going to call the police, and the uncle pulled the gun instead, and they had a fight.
That works.
You know, that's not bad, but then how does the uncle wind up dead back in the room with the art? Because if they have a struggle that's monumental and the killer gets the gun away from him, he's going to shoot him there in the office. He's not going to then run back to the art room. So no matter how you
Yeah. And drag him back into the other room in the art room just to only leave his corpse there.
Yeah, it's we're immediately starting off with something that doesn't make sense, even though it's not something that Columbo picked up on. This was supposed to make sense in the episode. So this is the one indefensible thing that I have to acknowledge, even in my favorite episode, that it's no way of justifying that.
It's a solid episode. I think this is a lot of people's favorite episode, to be quite honest with you. People love this episode.
Well, as we go on, and then maybe I'll do a little summary as to why, but to me this has everything. When you think Columbo, this has everything in there. But we'll definitely get to that. Moments after we see that, now his accomplice comes in, and honestly, for a Columbo accomplice, she was pretty good at her job.
She was excellent. First of all, her hair is on point. She has I would call a long Dorothy Hamill. Like the Dorothy Hamill haircut was huge early 80s. So she was sort of like a long Dorothy Hamill, a little ahead of her time. She was wearing a clock around her neck, like Flava Flav. She was wearing culottes, heels.
Yeah.
But she came in, she was she had a little moral crisis about what she was about to do for honestly, 5 seconds? She felt badly when she saw his uncle laying out on the floor. And then she took a look at those fancy ass paintings and she's like, you know what? I don't feel so bad anymore.
Don't feel so bad anymore. In fact, her only comment at that point was, gee, do you think I could ever, make art this good? Meanwhile, his uncle's lying dead on the floor.
His body is literally still warm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. She was actually a solid accomplice, actually. You're right.
Yeah. Yes. Because I think all of the other accomplices didn't know they were accomplices. Most of them were just victims of the killer.
I think there was maybe one or two that knew they were accomplices, but then it didn't go their way anyway. And then they felt badly about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, most notably the pilot, Prescription Murder, she was a very weak link, but, again, she also was a psychiatric patient, so he should have seen that coming.
I mean, in her defense.
Yeah.
She was a little unstable.
She was a little unstable to start. Now we're at the point where he's leaving her to set things up. He's reminding her of what she needs to do. And now he goes to get his alibi. So he goes to this wonderfully pretentious art gallery.
Love this party. Love this party.
Oh, it's so great. First of all, they play the same song for the entire 3 hours of the party.
Yes, they do. Also, I have a question. The party is an artist reception, correct? It's a gallery.
Yes.
And it's a reception celebrating this sort of hacky artist.
Yeah. And that's right. To sell his paintings as well. Yeah.
Is that Mel from
Yes.
Is that who that is?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that's Vic Tapeback. That was Mel from Mel's Diner. With a beard and a lot more hair than he had, by the time.
He had the Caesar curls. He had the little Caesar curls on his hair. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure if that's who that. I'm like, I think that's Mel from Mel's Diner. From what was that show? Alice, or was it Mel's Diner?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, no, it was. Well, they might have done the spinoff that I forgot about, but I know that it was Alice, and that was a TV version of the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Right.
But no, he was Mel. That's all I'll ever think of him as. So
that's what I
even
saw
in this episode. Even this episode is like, Mel's a painter. I just can't because he was doing such a good job. He made that character so him that even when he's, he's had a long career of usually being bad guys in movies, being tough thugs, and you could kind of see why.
Okay, that makes sense.
But that was absolutely him.
Okay, so he walks into this party, which is just so pretentious.
Oh, it's wonderfully so.
It just it hurts my stomach, the lines that all of them are saying. I'm like, I can't get any cringier. It just did.
And it just did. No, it's great because he is, of course, as we said, a famous art critic. And he would never basically go slumming at a place like this. But it was mostly an excuse for him to ask literally everybody, hey, what time is it? Yeah. I'm having trouble with my watch.
Can you talk about how clumsily he tried to establish an alibi? Yeah, I mean, what do you think on that? Because do you think it was, on one hand, I get it, because if you're going into a room with a bunch of artists, good luck finding anyone who has a watch.
Right.
So maybe because he did resort to a valet at one point to try to establish the time of when he was there. But do you think that's what really ruined his whole jam, his whole scheme, just going over the top with trying to establish an alibi?
That's tough, because again, I know we're going to discuss later when Columbo figured it out here,
right.
But it didn't help. It didn't help because even when he went to the valet, and again, this was very clever from a murderer point of view, but not from a this is what normal people do point of view.
Right.
When he went to the valet, he pretended he lost a cufflink, so the valet would search his entire car and the trunk of his car. So it would establish that not only exactly what time it was, but it would also establish that he had nothing in his car, so that he didn't have any of the stolen paintings or a gun or anything in his car.
Right.
So that, was something that we can get into real soon, because Columbo's about to show up. But yeah, I mean, it didn't help that when Columbo talked to everybody, every single person said, yeah, he kept looking at his watch and asking what time it is. So, that's what I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying, yeah, I think it was a little bit too much. But what I laugh at is when he was asking everybody what time it was, but virtually, except for the valet, none of them knew. None of them knew. They had no idea.
Yes, because a couple of times he'd say, oh, he's ahead of his time. And speaking of time, and nobody was interested. They didn't care. He was trying to get the time so desperately.
It's a long crowd. He probably should have just gone to like a restaurant.
He could have gone to a library that was open late. I mean, anything. Yeah. A restaurant would have been a good one, because then he could have said, hey, I ordered my meal a half an hour ago, and they could say, no, it's only been 15 minutes, sir. It's now 3:00.
Yes.
So that probably would have been a better chance of him actually getting the time. And the things, it's great because again, you have this famous art critic coming to this really nobody's gallery show, and so they're all just hanging on every word, and the sycophantic laughter is just wonderful at all the corny things he's saying.
But he still laughs the loudest at his own jokes.
Yes, he does. He does. It's why he's wonderfully, wonderfully arrogant. I mean, this is just somebody that you see before Columbo shows up, you badly want him caught.
Yeah.
Because he's just so horrible.
I don't even care about the murder. I'm just like, you're just awful. Please get arrested and put away for something. I mean, whatever. I'm like a little,
Have somebody break your pen.
Yeah.
I don't know, you can't write anymore. But no, he's just terrible.
And he's surrounded by everybody the entire episode, where they're all laughing in unison at whatever horrible, cringeworthy joke he just made.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I may edit in a couple of them just so that everyone listening can find themselves of some of the really awful things that he's saying. And there's even, it's wonderful because there's even a pause. I mean, again, this was so well acted and so well written, as all Columbos were. Yeah. That there is a noticeable pause when people are like, oh, that was a joke. And then he starts to laugh, and so it's just, oh God, it's just so awful.
So that the meaning of a mobile stems not only from its form, but the relationship between the pieces, which gives it its meaning. And I suppose the relationship between the pieces is really where it's at, isn't it? Yes. It's not so much a question of his masculinity. I think the artist just saw him that way. I'll drink to that. You notice no matter how abstract the painter, he always signs his name realistically, doesn't he?
Was there anything else you wanted to say about the party? Or
the party I love in that, just again, because he shows up in a crushed velvet tuxedo with a ruffled shirt and just the most offensive cufflinks. They're just so big. And
I haven't seen cufflinks like that since the video game Clue, when Mr. Green had to have really obnoxiously large green cufflinks.
I remember that. So he comes walking in like that, but it's muted. He's actually tasteful comparatively because the woman who's running the gallery is wearing a lame caftan. So she's wearing what I would call like bathroom wallpaper in the 70s as material for her caftan.
Yes.
And there's just so many caftan. I love a caftan, don't get me wrong. But as I was watching that at the party scene, I'm like, fashions come and go and things come in and out of style. And certainly the 70s is not exempt from that. But I don't really recall a crushed velvet jacket coming back.
Right.
Like that with the ruffled combination. I guess Prince. Let me take all of that back because Prince did do all of the things. And he looked amazing. And maybe it didn't come back for the masses because Prince did it. And we're just like, you know what? Go right ahead. You got it.
It's been done. Nobody else is going to look better than him in that. So what's the point? Let's just bring back bell bottoms for a week and a half and call it a day.
Just love bell bottoms again. And you know what they say? If you're old enough to wear it the first time around, you shouldn't be wearing it the second time around. I'm like,
I did not know they say that, but that sounds good.
Yeah, so that's the party scene. The art is particularly awful. Yeah, the art is hanging sculptures and structures of like giant metal pieces. It looks like there's like not Rubik's cubes, but those structures that like expand and contract. That's that.
Yeah.
It looks like
one was made out of child's puzzles and drinking straws is what a lot of them look like they were.
And then Mel's artwork is really bad. I think it's a cactus flower.
Yes.
And that's the piece that he's like this tortured artist over. And Dale comes in and it's like, oh, you do arid landscapes, which is just so dismissive.
Yes.
But the art is bad. And if you contrast it to the beginning of the episode when you see all the classic works of art that his uncle did have, you're just like, oh, this is a whole bunch of garbage. Yeah. So yes, that was the party scene with an endless loop of the same music.
Yes, and that's what was funny because it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. It's blah blah blah, good decent background music. But you realize he's supposed to be there for at least an hour, if not longer, and it's the same song. It's the same 5-minute song, just played over and over and over again.
In my head, it's the girl from Ipanema. I know it's not. But
no,
in my
it's
head,
not.
That's what the music is.
It's a Latin version of a song that literally means, I believe, pictures on display. So it's even cornier than that. But yeah. But it might as well have been Girl from Ipanema because it has the type of elevator music quality.
But it's very music.
Yeah. So now I think if there's nothing more, we have Columbo's entrance.
Police Department, Lieutenant Columbo. Would you mind if I came in?
Again, because the murder took place so early, this is also an early entry for Columbo at just around 14 minutes or so. So he's immediately suspicious that the thief would go from a less valuable painting, a Birnbaum, and then after everything goes wrong and he accidentally kills the owner of the house, he suddenly grabs the two most valuable pieces that Degas pastels, and therefore he elicits the help of Dale Kingston, since he feels he's going to need a lot of help with all this art stuff, including taking him up on a sarcastic offer to search his house when he's not at home.
Here's my key.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we jumping briefly to that scene, it's great. This may be the fastest, and I don't know, maybe this is just an accelerated version of Columbo in every way, because this is the fastest that a killer already is annoyed by Columbo. Like he's in the house, he's already visibly annoyed at this man who's walking around with a cigar around all this art, and also just that he's instantly not asking about his uncle, not asking about him, just saying, oh, you're that art critic. Hey, can you tell me about this? What do you think of this? And he goes on about why would killer first start to go for a Birnbaum and then know that it's not go for the De Groot, which would have been another option out there. So
maybe that's what makes this episode so good is because the pacing is very quick comparatively.
I think that's
there's no slow burn here. It just all happens and it all unfolds.
And because of that, he also doesn't really collapse like other killers do until the very last second, which makes for a wonderful ending, which of course we'll get to. But that's a big thing right off the bat, is that the killer is already being very condescending and annoyed with him. Columbo is already treating him in a way like he knows he's a killer, because if he doesn't, he's kind of being a jerk. You know, if you tell somebody whose uncle was found murdered on the floor, hey, by the way, I know you're an art critic and I know your uncle's like 10 feet away from us and dead, but, why don't you tell me a little bit about this Birnbaum versus de Groot business?
Right.
So there was that. At this point now, Columbo's on the scene. So he's now trying to check on the alibi. And so he goes to visit, again, the artist and the gallery owner, who are both very hungover from the party the night before, which Dale is not, interestingly enough. So he obviously either was not drinking as much as the rest of them to keep himself sharp, or he's accustomed to doing a lot of drinking, one or the other. But he was clearly not hungover. So he visits the artist and the dealer, and it's funny because the entire scene really only established two things. One, that yes, Dale was going around asking everybody what time it was, and two, that the artist makes really terrible art. That Columbo would want to ask him later on, hey, why you looking at this guy's stuff? You're a famous art critic. But it also, I believe, is the first episode in which we kind of see how prudish Columbo is. He walks in the room with the nude artist and he practically faints. He turns his head, he looks at the camera, he puts his hand up in front of his face.
That's a theme from the 70s through the 90s. Where there's an episode in the 90s, I think it is a Robert Culp one again, by the way, where he has to he winds up in a lingerie store in the 90s in one of those episodes. And there's a mannequin wearing a bra and underpants, and he just is beside himself.
Can't handle it, right.
So for all of those years, it's a common theme where he is very, very prudish.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I don't know if you've ever been in front of a nude model, if you ever had taken art class or anything like that, but it is a little jarring. So to walk into that situation unknowingly, and she is particularly beautiful, And to walk into that scene, it's a little jarring, but he really did completely lose his composure. Like couldn't handle. He's like covering his eyes, turning around. He lost it.
If Vic Tayback was the murderer, he would have gotten away with that episode, because all he'd have to do is just continue to have a nude model on site, and Columbo would be worthless. But
somebody should call Robert Culp. Let him know, because that worked beautifully.
You're doing this the wrong way. Just have an artist paint a nude woman, and you're good to go.
Exactly.
But I thought that was noteworthy for that I'm almost positive. In fact, no, I am positive that was definitely the first time it became very evident that he's kind of uncomfortable with sexuality or nudity, or which it just was funny, the shocked look, and I liked that they had the artist and the model just kind of treat it like they would treat it, which is this is just a job, and I'm annoyed with you and you're annoyed with me, and all right already, whatever,
Right.
So I thought that was pretty good.
So Columbo goes there to establish, I guess, to look at Dale's alibi with the time. And again, the gallery owner really had no idea.
No.
She knew she went to bed, or guest left at around 3 a.m. Was that right?
Yeah, I believe 3 a.m. sounds right to me. Yeah. And that she was hungover, he was hungover, everybody was hungover.
And again, everyone was, Dale asked everybody about the time, but the artist, he did have a conversation. They literally they filmed a scene where they both looked at their watches, but the artist was like, I don't remember the time at all. Right. But they filmed that scene. So again,
they did.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, he really. Maybe Dale's character went over the top trying to establish that alibi with the time, only because he picked a bunch of flaky people to try to establish time with, because ultimately how he got the time established was from that valet.
Right. And he did, you're right, because the artist even looked at his watch and said, I have past 11, sir, or whatever, whatever he said. But again, he even forgot the next day.
He totally forgot it.
Because why would it matter to anybody? It only matters to him, and that's what's so funny. Right. That's right, because he even went so far, Dale, as to give the valet a large tip for the time, just so that he would remember the time. So it was just really, so not only did he have him search his entire car, confirm what time it was, but gave him the equivalent of what would probably be a $20 tip now, just to make sure he stands out. And I think it was like either $2 or $5, but it was $2. Whatever it was. Yeah, okay, it was $2, but even that was enough to make Columbo say he tipped you $2. You know, like that was a big deal. Like that was a big deal, and it probably was then. So. Right. So it probably would have been the equivalent of at least 15 to 20, just to look for nothing in the car.
I think people tip valets $2 now. You know, so I do think it's a lot of money. No, I think they do. I think they hand them, like $1 or $2 now, or I do $5 because I'm a lady. But
Now at the house, while they were just kind of clearing things up, that's when they had this kind of fun scene where a policewoman is brought in specifically to run down the back stairs to see if the security guard who was alerted by the gunshot recognized what he heard.
Because he heard the killer running away from the scene.
Right.
The security guard had heard the killer running away from the scene.
Yes, because part of the plan was the accomplice who was sitting there with the corpse under a blanket was waiting for a certain time to then fire a gunshot out the window so that the security guard would really hear the gunshot, come running into the house, see the body, and then hear her run away.
Right.
And so what the security guard heard was a woman's footsteps running down the stairs. And so they had a policewoman duplicate that. And that was, again, kind of a nice little natural scene. She was just saying hi to everybody. It was just kind of well acted as far as, oh, hey, how's it going? Yeah, all right, go ahead and run. But the part that struck me as strange is that they did that. They confirmed that it was a woman who was in the house, but that when Columbo told Dale, yes, the accomplice, Dale seemed surprised that he figured out that there were two people. Yes. So again, did he really think that a woman was tearing apart this room, throwing his uncle around the room, and then got the gun away and shot him? Or was it acting like, oh, you think there was a woman involved too? Because his plan is to frame his aunt. We'll get, obviously that's the next part of his plan, is to frame his aunt. So he certainly wanted to make sure that somebody knew that a woman was there.
Right.
What I don't know is, do you think he was surprised? Did he really want Columbo to think it was just the aunt who went in and tried to steal it? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Okay. I think he's super progressive. I think he thought, of course, a woman could get tussled, get into a tussle with a grown man and throw books at him and then knock over a chess set and then shoot him. I think, no, and all kidding aside, I really do think he, all along, he thought it was a foolproof plan, that the aunt was capable of doing all this. I don't know, when we get introduced to the aunt, she's not capable of going shopping.
No.
So I don't know why he thought that he would do this very, calculating and really cold-blooded murder plot for her, because it just does not. I mean, honestly, the woman is they essentially casted a bird for this part.
Yes.
So but I do, to answer your question, I do think he thought that Columbo would never pick up on the fact that there would be two people. I think he designed the entire plan was to make it look like the aunt came in, killed him, took the artwork.
Right. And again, that's where I have to be a little critical, because if it was the aunt, first of all, he probably would have just given it to her, which we find out that he does anyway.
Yes.
But even if not, if he surprised her in the house, I don't think that he would have run for a gun. I think he would have just said, "Oh, what are you doing here, my ex-wife, who I'm still on good terms with?"
Yeah, all of that is very, very flawed. All of her motive for killing him is very flawed. She really has no motive. Her motive for getting into a fight with him to steal 2 pastels is flawed. Literally none of those things would happen. Again, and she's so incapable of even holding a conversation. I mean, that it was over the top with her.
Yes.
Which honestly, I kind of wish that she was the victim, because she was a lot for me to listen to. I know you like her. It's just too much. She's a lot for me.
No.
Oh, really?
I thought you. No. She's awful.
Okay, thank you.
No.
She's like a parakeet in a power suit. I can't with her at all. She's so frenetic. It makes me nervous to watch her.
Yeah, it is a struggle for her to speak. Like I think Claudius had an easier time talking than she did, and it's but for no reason. It's not I guess they wanted to make her meek, but there's really no reason why she should have been acting that way. It was very strange.
I don't know what the direction is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I joked about it being Roddy McDowall in a wig, but basically she was kind of acting like him at his most over the top.
It was like Fright Night Roddy McDowall. It was like that level of nervousness, and it was so over the top, and I was just like, I can't believe you're in this episode for maybe 8 minutes total, and it took over the episode for me. In my head, she's the entire episode. She was a lot.
No, she's pretty rough there. So, we're introduced to her mostly to find out at first that the uncle left her all of the paintings in his will. And that's part of the setup of the frame, is that I assuming that Dale thought that people would think that she would have killed his uncle so that she could have gotten the artwork maybe sooner rather than later, not knowing that she had planned to give it to a museum because there was nothing in place for that. She could just be saying that. So her motive really is this multi-million-dollar art collection that she could be getting. But that's also when we meet Don Amici, the great Don Amici. I love Don Amici.
I have to stop you. I have to ask you. You love Don Amici. Our entire family loves Don Amici. Everybody seems to love Don Amici. He's celebrated. In the credits, he's like the special guest star. Right. On the DVD that I have of the entire Columbo series, he's listed before the title of this. So everyone loves Don Amici. I only know him from Cocoon. Why does everyone love this guy? I mean, I get it. He's great. But tell me why. Like, what is his deal?
Well, okay, so there's Cocoon, there's Trading Places, of course, where he played.
Trading Places. Is that Michael Caine? Who is in
that? No, that was the Eddie Murphy movie where Don Amici. Okay, so So, but he was really a maybe a 1940s 50s movie star. So he was kind of in the same vein of where Jessica Fletcher would have the guest that week be a famous movie star from the 50s who is now just doing a guest spot. Yeah. This was kind of the same idea. A Love Boat, they would just all do that same type of thing.
But that's where I know him from special appearances, and everyone's excited about it, but I don't know the origin of the excitement.
Right. Yeah, I probably because the movies were much more serious and probably not really in our interest or genre.
Okay.
For me, I think he was hysterical because he did a series of radio bits called The Bickersons where every episode was just him having an argument with his wife at 3 a.m. and it was just funny the way they would just tear each other apart like that.
That's him? Because I actually know the Bickerson. Okay, that's him. Got it. Okay.
So picture that, but now as an actual movie career and everything else. So that's where that came from. So that was a good sidebar because I really do enjoy him. So, and he didn't really have all that much to do this episode except just kind of be there and get manipulated a little by Dale, so there wasn't much of him, but it was good. So at least for every bit that there was an Aunt Edna, there was at least Don Amici.
Okay. True. Fair.
Now, at this point, Columbo has, really heavily harassed Dale Kingston on this one. I feel like, again, like in the theme of ramping everything up, that he has really harassed him a lot more than other killers at this point. But mostly it's because of Dale's own arrogance. Like when Columbo catches him at the end of Dale's TV show where he's presenting a lecture on art, Dale again is already so angry and upset and like, oh, you think you've got it all figured out, don't you, Columbo? And, it's just like, look, you can search my car, you can search my house, here's my key. And
that was the funniest thing to me, is that you're going to give him a key to your home.
To your home when you know you're a murderer.
I mean, he does it.
He doesn't.
Columbo takes it.
Well, and that's the part that's hysterical because Dale Kingston is clearly so used to being a blustering, and people were like, "Oh, hey, come on, I didn't." And then Columbo just says, "Oh, well, you don't have to, but that would make things a lot easier." And he takes the key out of his hand and says, "Oh." He takes the key to his house. The idiot invited him into his house, which makes it completely legal.
I mean, normally you would need a warrant for all of those things, but he's like, let me hand this over to you. And Columbo's like, yoink. Yeah. All right. He takes it.
Great.
Oh, and I just want to say, as much as everything else is revved up in this episode, I find that Columbo's bumbling idiot routine is actually pretty low.
Yes.
He's really, how he sort of disarms a lot of the murderers by being like, shucks, I'm just a small town, even though he's like an LA county.
An LA homicide detective.
But he's like, the bumbling Columbo idiot meter is very, very, very low on this one. He's just sort of direct all around.
Yeah, he really is. I think it's because the arrogance and annoyance level of the one guy is so high that he just feels he doesn't even have to do that. He's just like,
because Dale already thinks he's an idiot. Yes. So he doesn't have to pretend to be one.
Yeah, he doesn't have to idiot it up. Yeah.
Right.
So now, obviously, he's been harassing him heavily. By the way, again, quick sidebar, just as far as a little annoyance that I think is wonderful because this guy is so arrogant. At the end of his show, the little show he does as that lecture series, he describes Goya as the pentultimate artist. Mm-hmm. And that just literally means the second to last artist. Pentultimate doesn't mean anything except second to last. But that is such an arrogant thing to say. And I thought, this is wonderful. I don't know if they purposely got that wrong or if it was just something that an art critic could say. But I mean, it would literally, like, if he had 5 artists on the list and Goya was 4th, that would make him the pentultimate artist. Otherwise,
that's really funny. That's
otherwise
really,
he
really
meant
good.
to say, and it just always strikes me every time because I'm like, that's not what that means.
I don't think people use it like that. I don't think probably people use it wrong. So I don't know how that. I don't know. That's interesting. His TV show where he's a famous art critic, I'm assuming it would be like the equivalent of watching something on PBS, right?
I would think so. That would be my presumption.
So his TV show is also unbearable. Just the 2-second clip that they show of it, it's actually unbearable. He's mugging for the camera. Yep. It's such an extreme close-up. He turns around. It's a lot. So and
it's great too because they even call it out on purpose when it's like, and you can get a transcript for a nominal fee, and then he just pauses, but the camera's still on him, and it just is that awful moment where he just looks like a moron. So it's the wonderful way that the writing and acting just makes us think, look, this is a guy who thinks he's in control, and really he's just a dope.
Yeah, he really is. And I think his uncle knew that. I think his uncle knew he was all BS.
Yeah, that it was all blather, and that that he didn't want that art collection going to him.
Right.
So that was everything kind of leading up to it, Columbo harassing him, everything. And then at the reading of the will, that's when Columbo finds out that the Aunt Edna is the one who's getting the artwork. And so it kind of takes away Dale's motive because he met him afterwards. And again, Dale just being so obnoxious. Oh, do you think you'd find me in the parking lot kicking tires? It's just like almost taunting Columbo with his obnoxiousness.
Yes.
So awful. He's so wonderfully awful. Hats off, Ross Martin. But that's when he provided proof that he knew that the artwork was going to Aunt Edna, therefore really kind of eliminating his motive. And that's when everything starts to shift toward Aunt Edna. That's where Dale takes the wrapping paper that was around some of the artwork. We wondered why in the very beginning of the episode he was kind of showing it to the camera, but basically it was to remind us that this is wrapping paper from that. The gun was tossed in Aunt Edna's flower bed.
He just is planting a bunch of evidence.
Yes.
On top of everything else, he was now just really, like you said, it was accelerated at this point where he's just planting evidence all for Aunt Edna, which again, I mean, who else would you pin it on? But maybe you can make it more of a bumbling crime because she is a full-on incapable, limited woman.
Yeah, she really.
I would never regret divorcing her ever. That's all I'm saying. Like, they made a big deal about how this was a mistake that he did. Like, I just met her and I immediately would want to divorce her.
Yeah.
I would marry her simply to divorce her instantly. She's just unbearable.
She really is. I mean, she's just the worst. In an episode full of people who are the worst, she's just the worst.
Do you know who I like in this episode? I like his servants. I like that nice little couple where he did give them $2,000 a year, which I looked up, and in today's money, it's like $13,000 a year.
Right. Yeah. Right, so it still was not really a lot for them to live on. He could have been a little more generous with them.
He could have been a little more generous, but they seemed pretty happy with it. I mean, they're getting $13,000 a year to not have to work for him. So it's true. On top of other salaries, but they're an elderly couple to find more work. Yeah, so that's that whole scene where Don Amici is going through who gets what. And so that's when we find out that Aunt Edna, like you said, inherited the art collection. And I have to ask you this at this point.
Yes.
Let's put your mindset as the uncle.
Okay.
Are you asking for it? Wouldn't you throw your unstable, narcissistic nephew a bone so you wouldn't get murdered? Because they haven't established that he hated him for any reason. I mean, I get why he would hate him, right? I get why the relationship
is strained. He probably watched the show.
He probably watched the show. I mean, he's a frivolous person.
Yes.
Dale did make mention at one point to Columbo that he's not independently wealthy like his uncle, so he has to work for a living and all of those. So obviously there's tension there. It wasn't really established in the episode more than that, I think. But as the uncle, if you know that you have a narcissistic, awful nephew in the very field where you have something that you can leave him to, right? Yeah. And you don't. And then you leave it to your awful ex-wife, who I still maintain is a bird. She just acts like the most nervous bird I've ever seen. You're kind of, and then you let him know. You let him know that you're not leaving him the collection.
Right.
And then he comes walking to your house grinning while you're playing, your piano.
Right.
Again, not that you're asking for, but like, what did you kind of think was going to happen?
I think that maybe there's an arrogance gene, perhaps, since he was his nephew, and that they just all think that they're all untouchable, because clearly a lot of Dale's plan revolved around everyone involved being stupid.
Okay,
to be fair, we've really punched some pretty significant holes in his plan. Sure. Which, while you're watching the episode, still seems pretty good. But it's like it's two different plots. Like the first plot is, I'm going to make it look like someone broke in and stole the art. And then, now that we've established that, I'm going to frame it on my aunt, which would have had absolutely nothing to do with the first part of the break-in. But it sounds great. But I think if you have a situation like that, you probably are going to want to give your nephew something, like maybe even if he just gave his nephew the pastels and then left the entire rest of the collection.
What you find out later is that the only reason the uncle began collecting is really, or continued his collection, I should say, to this very, very smart investment, is because of Dale.
Yes. He started the collection because of his ex-wife.
Right.
But
continued
it, and that basically Dale made a career out of being a critic for the collection, but also he was advising his uncle on which pieces to get. I mean,
the very bulk of his wealth was a result of Dale, truthfully.
Yeah. So I would think you would want to at least leave him either a Rembrandt or the Degas thing, just the Degas pastels, just like you say, to just kind of make yourself more valuable alive than dead. I don't know. I just think it's probably never a good idea to be so much more valuable dead than alive if you can help it.
I know. That's what I struggle with every day with all my choices.
Yeah. Hell, that's why I don't have life insurance. I'm like, no.
There you go. It's just a gamble.
I need to be alive. I can only make money if I'm alive. I'm sorry.
So
just health.
So they've established. So now, like you said, Dale is now really again, very fast-paced episode. Lots of action happening because he's planting evidence left and right to really frame Waka Waka Aunt Edna.
Yep, she is suitable for framing. Yes,
she's suitable for framing.
Now, and as all of this is going on, we should probably take a step back and just remind everyone that when Columbo took the key and Dale had spent his day murdering his accomplice.
Oh yeah, we forgot to talk about the fact that he murdered his accomplice.
Yes, no, he murdered his accomplice. So he's giving a lieutenant in the homicide department of Los Angeles a key to his apartment while he's planning to go out and murder his accomplice. So now, and again, this is why he's such a horrible, horrible person and villain, is, yes, she was a willing accomplice to murder, and that makes her pretty terrible too. Yeah. But she was, with the exception of calling him maybe a little earlier than she should have, she was really holding it together pretty well. There was really no reason to get rid of her.
I was going to ask you that because I thought about that. I'm not quite sure why he murdered her, with the exception of he just wanted to, no witnesses. I don't know why he murdered her.
I think that's the only reason. I
Maybe
think
he didn't want to marry her.
Well,
she was in love with him.
Yeah, she was in love with him. That's how he got her to be an accomplice. He seduced a student. She was an art student of his, and she also made terrible art.
Terrible art. That signed it Tracy. I mean, it's just awful.
she signed it Tracy, like I signed a seventh grade picture of a grape and a pear with my name. I mean,
honestly, she was just a step above making like an ashtray at camp. That was like her level of art skill, her artistic skills. Yes. So she was god awful.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. So I mean, and he just beats her head in with a rock. I mean, it was just horrible. It was just
brutal.
No reason.
That was a brutal murder. That was a brutal war. Because he bludgeons her with a rock, right? She doesn't even expect it at all.
No.
And then I guess has the car go over the
cliff. He sends the car over a cliff to make it look like a car accident.
So also, I guess he had to render her unconscious to do that, and that's why he did that. Because it's such a terrible way to kill somebody. Yeah. But because I would think, like, you know what, just shove her in the car, just have them both go over, she'll die anyway. Right. But I guess you want to make sure that she's dead before you do that, or at least unconscious before you do that. Just you don't want to take a chance that she could try and hop out of the car or have a struggle. Try and jump out or something. Yeah. That was, you know what, I can't believe I forgot to talk about that, but you're right, because that was a nasty. This is a 2-body episode. The body count for this episode is 2.
Yes.
And that was a horrible way to kill her. And she did everything right in terms of what she thought she was doing. She did everything right. She called him a little early at the studio. That's what she did too.
She called him a little early at the studio, but I don't, but she also didn't panic. She wasn't like, I need to see you. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Just like, okay, hey, just wanted to make sure you're. Yeah. No. She was a pretty solid accomplice, but I honestly think, and this is definitely going to come up in other episodes, but I honestly think that we weren't supposed to necessarily hate him as much for killing his uncle, but we really needed to have absolutely no shadow of a doubt that we're supposed to hate this guy with everything we've got. And of course, she was an accomplice to murder. So, but what was lousy was
she's not great. You know what I mean? Like, she's not great. As a person, she's kind of crappy.
Kind of lousy as a person, really great as a murder accomplice. But I think it was a combination of tying up loose ends. Yeah. She was definitely a loose end. But what was lousy is that he just again kept it up at the very end. He's just like, "Oh, I love you. Here's one more kiss," and then he waits until she turns around to look at him. Oh. It's that whole thing. It's like, hey, can't you just run up behind her and hit her? Did you have to wait till she looks at you to?
I know, because
so that was really just awful.
That did bother me too. It's a terrible. That's a terrible murder. And I forgot about it. You know why I forgot about it? Because stupid Aunt Edna. Because no, I not at all. Because stupid Aunt Edna overshadowed everything. Her in that suit with her. She even drives like a nervous person. There's a scene of her driving away and she's still flustered. I'm like, how are you flustered driving? So she overshadowed the murder of driving a 1971 Cadillac, so she's driving like a 400-foot vehicle. It's like driving your living room. It's like they're huge. I don't know if you ever sat in the back of an old Cadillac. I have, and it's like your full living room sectional. That's what it's like back there. They're huge, and it's so comfortable. But yeah, no, she that's why. Not because I blocked it out because I'm too delicate. Right. It's because Aunt Linda's awful.
And it just ruined it for you.
She ruined it.
So he comes back from that to find Columbo asleep in his house.
Was he really asleep? What do you think? No, do you think he was really asleep?
Okay. There's no chance in the world he was really asleep.
All right, I was just
There's not. That's not even open for debate. That's just that's him pretending and just go wow sorry what time is it?
That's the most bumbling he got.
Yeah.
Oh, it startled me.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I fell asleep. I didn't know what was going on. No chance on the face of the earth. He was waiting for Dale to come back with some incriminating evidence, which he did because the reason Dale met his accomplice was to get the Degas pastels to frame Edna with as well. And he carried them in this large paper, I guess, painting
portfolio
bag.
Yeah, it's a portfolio case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Columbo, of course, gets excited. He says, "Oh, hey, what's that?" And the guy, whatever the guy said, he was going to say, "Hey, I was just looking at those in your books that you let me read on art. They happen to be watercolors," which was, of course, a lie. And Columbo reaches his hand in and grabs them, but Dale shuts the bag and says, "Will you get out of here?" Basically, go on, get lost.
Columbo does like a grab bag, like it's at, like a Christmas Secret Santa. He just shoves his hand right in there, and then Dale's like, "Oh, humana." And again, how arrogant are you? You gave him the key to sit in your house on the very day that you're murdering your accomplice, that you were certainly walking in with evidence.
Yes, that you knew that you were meeting her to get those pastels, to kill her, to bring pastels into your home, knowing that you gave a key to a lieutenant in the homicide division of Los Angeles. So, that's kind of on him.
You know what I mean? Like, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, this was on Dale. That's a problem right there.
Right.
So now with the blame trying to be shifted over to Edna, of course, now that he's planted all this evidence, he wants to convince the police department to search her house for that evidence so that he can just put his plan to rest. And then Columbo does this wonderful thing where he now completely frustrates him by saying, "Oh, you know what? I made a mistake with you. I falsely accused you. I don't want to make that mistake with her. Nah, there's no point in searching the house. There's no reason to do it." And the more insistent Dale became on searching the house, the more relaxed Columbo became about, there's no reason to even bother to do that. And he did the wonderful thing where Dale says, "Oh, that woman wouldn't hurt a fly." And Columbo said, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. I don't think she did this."
Yeah. Yes.
So I guess as Columbo catches the killer, Columbo shows up at Edna's house, which is in the process of being searched. And he fools Dale with, honestly, the best twist ending I've ever seen in an episode of Columbo.
Yeah, but I have to say,
we'll
I
have
would agree.
A little into that, but Dale goes over Columbo's head by going to Don Amici and having Don Amici insist that the house is searched, supposedly to clear Aunt Edna. If they search the house, there's no evidence, then she's off the list. And that's how he presented it. Don Amici falls for it. Almost, even at the last second, he's like, "Are you sure we should be doing this?" And he's like, "How could you?"
Yeah, because America's sweetheart, Don Amici, is saying to Dale, honestly, though, the evidence, she has an excellent motive and all these things.
Right.
And, are you sure? And he even says, "I thought you said Lieutenant Columbo doesn't suspect her. Like, why are we doing this?" And Dale insists, for the very reason that he doesn't suspect her, we need to also support that non-suspicion of her by doing this search. I mean, it's just complete nonsense.
It is. To be fair, he did say, "That's today, but what about tomorrow? This Columbo guy's unstable."
He's unstable. He's mercurial.
If he doesn't find a scapegoat soon, he may scapegoat her. So we should really get this house done. So of course they, they're now in her house. All the police have shown up. There's must be 1,000 cops. I don't think there's been that many cops in an episode of Columbo.
There was
a lot of guys.
There's a lot because she has a fancy circular driveway, and there was completely packed out. Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah, there was
just to search this one ex-wife bird's apartment
that nobody really suspects does.
That no one suspects.
And so again, Dale has to pull off this amazing thing where he has to make up an excuse to go to the bathroom. So in a very clumsy and obvious way, he spills soda from Scotch and soda on himself to go get a towel, and he slips those pastels into the bathroom to be found. But again, while all the police are there, or I guess they were coming in just moments anyway. If they hadn't, I think that it already started, but just in the main area.
That's correct.
Because it was only a few moments later that the police said, "Hey, Chief, get a look at this." But that's when Columbo shows up before the paintings are found, just as the searching is taking place, and he says, "Oh, I got kind of bypassed on this. My boss, I didn't want to search the house, but, the boss said, hey, we should do that." And Dale says something which I think also starts to make even Don Amici a little suspicious, where he said, well, Frank and I thought that this house should be searched. And Don Amici was like, yeah, you did. It was something to the effect of, that was really your idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, speak for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, they find the paintings, and they bring the paintings, front and center. They bring it down the table in the middle of the room, and now they went full Agatha Christie with every suspect in the room, standing around this, in kind of a circle with the detectives opening it up, and Dale is pretending to be shocked, like, "Oh, Aunt Edna, how could you?"
With his smug haircut, yes.
Yeah. And that's when Columbo really is like you said, he's very direct in this one, and in this one he just basically said, "Oh no, she didn't do it. I think you killed him."
Yeah.
And you planted this in our house. Yeah. He didn't have much to say about the accomplice, because that looked enough like an accident that it really wasn't kind of brought up again. It was just kind of like, "Oh, well, I think you did it, but I can't prove that."
That
basically
was very briefly referred to. You're right.
Yeah. But then it was, "Oh yeah, no, I think you killed her, and you planted this in the house for us to arrest her. Because if she's arrested and he's dead, then this artwork all goes to you." And that's when he's like, there's a lot of witnesses here. I hope you know what you're saying. And this, basically, "I'd like to speak to your manager" voice, know.
Yeah.
And that's when I guess it was the chief. I forgot his title, if it was the chief or sergeant, but he had turned lieutenant and said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And Dale said, "What do you mean? I didn't think it was his case anymore." And the sergeant said, "You know what you thought."
Yes, I love that.
That's just a wonderful, wonderful thing.
So dismissive. It's like to shut down someone like him, where, in Dale's own world, he is the center of everything, and he's so self-important. And then, like, you put him in front of someone who's like really in charge, who really is an authority figure, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you know what? We know what you thought." It's just such a good burn. Yeah.
It's great.
And it's such a burn because it wasn't even intended to be a burn. It's like, you're actually nothing. Let the big boys talk, Yeah.
It's like, look, exactly. And they further it by not answering his question. He says, "Well, can we prove it?" And so they're dusting it. They're dusting the picture for fingerprints, and he says, "I'd like an answer." And they're just like, "Yeah, you don't get an answer. Who cares? You're nothing. Shut up."
Right.
But then he says, "Oh, no. My fingerprints are all over those paintings. I helped to unpack them." And that's the wonderful, wonderful ending where Columbo says, "Oh, they're not looking for your fingerprints. They're looking for my fingerprints from when I was in your house, reached into your bag and touched them." And that is when he first realizes in the entire episode, this is the first time he realizes that Columbo was actually smarter than him. Yes. It was the first time he started to break down. It was the first time that he, other killers know a lot sooner than him that Columbo is a dangerous, dangerous man. Right. He only then figured it out. And even so, to his credit, even as he's melting down, Dale is saying, no, you just touched that now. You saw him, didn't you? Like, he's trying to convince other people to lie.
He's pretty quick on his feet. I have to say, he is pretty quick on his feet. Yeah.
And then, of course, in really the best of the best endings, Columbo just looks at him, and we don't even realize it. We don't register it on a conscious level, but he's had his hands in his pockets the entire time for that segment, and all he does is he pulls his hands out in kind of a gesture of kind of a shrug.
Yeah.
And he's wearing gloves.
Yeah.
And no words are spoken. At that point, it just goes to Ross Martin, who's just looking like, oh, that was my last shot. That was my last trick. I'm dead. I'm completely screwed. Yeah. And the episode just ends. And
it's a perfect ending. It is a perfect ending.
Yes.
And he's wearing those gray gloves, and that's sort of how the episode starts, with Dale wearing those gloves. You know, he reveals he's had his hands behind his back. It's very similar. And then he reveals it's his gun, and he also is wearing gloves. So it's sort of it's honestly, it's picture perfect.
It really is. It is.
But it's a phenomenal ending. It's such a good twist. It's just the when Columbo says, "Oh no, we're adjusting for my prince." Yes. That alone, it just takes it's so good. It's just so well done.
Yes, because by the in between when he reaches in the bag and the time that becomes important is so much more of the episode that, you know, you realize he has already known for a long time Dale's the killer. He has already now found the way to catch him, and he's escalated things by saying, well, you know, this case will probably be open for years until we find some evidence to finesse, but I'm not going to search her house to finesse Dale into fixing the issue. So, I mean, Columbo, this is one where he was just in control from basically minute one.
I would say it was, he had, absolutely.
So I guess that can lead to our segment, when did Columbo know?
I kind of knew it right from the start. It was nothing definite. It was a lot of little things.
I'm going to put in my bid for instantly.
You think so?
I think so. I think as soon as Dale walked in the room, I think as soon as Columbo confirmed that the killer was going for a very worthless or less valuable painting, and then suddenly went for the most valuable paintings in the entire thing, that he suddenly got smart. And again, I don't know. I mean, that's why we're debating it if you're not sure. But if not, then he was being a complete jerk to a guy who just lost his uncle. So I almost have to think that he knew right away. Otherwise, he was kind of a monster if he didn't.
I think he did too. I think it's too convenient that, first of all, you know, murders are mostly done by, they always look at people that you're closest to first, right? So it is his uncle, and he's an art critic, and this is an art themed crime. So I would tend to agree. I don't know if he knew immediately. He definitely suspected. I think for certain, once he talked to the valet, once Columbo talked to the valet, and he realized that the valet got a huge tip, and that Dale went around at a party that he shouldn't have gone to because it's for such a low level artist.
Yes.
So he showed up to this party specifically just to ask everybody what time it was, and had the valet search his trunk for a cufflinks.
Yes.
I think by then, so when I was watching this episode and I was thinking about it, I'm like, that's when he knew. But you know what? It honestly, he knew as soon as an art critic walked in the door who was an immediate relative. So, you know, I mean, that's really it.
I think I would agree with that. Just like in a later episode, he knew who the killer was the second he realized he smoked a cigar, just because he was looking for a cigar smoker. You know, so it didn't even matter that he didn't give himself away. It was just, I know the killer is a cigar smoker.
Right.
In this case, I think it's almost instant, and because it really would be like if Roger Ebert showed up to look at my home movies. I mean, that's the level of
it really is,
you know, of this guy going to that. And I know they gave it a hand wave saying, well, if I write a nasty article, I get paid more than if I write a nice article, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, that's not just punching down. That's like beating up a kindergartner. There's no, so I do feel that he knew right away. I could certainly agree that maybe he kind of confirmed by talking to the valet.
Right.
But I think he strongly was suspected or certainly knew. So now the sympathy meter, where we judge a killer based on a scale of Ruth Gordon to Dick Van Dyke.
I'm beginning to be very fond of you, Lieutenant. I think you're a very kind man.
Don't count on that.
I mean, I know where I'm putting this guy. I wanted him arrested within 10 seconds of meeting him. Yeah. So I guess it depends if we're going vicious or sympathy. I guess we probably never really did quite nail that down. But if we're going sympathy, I'm putting him right with Dick Van Dyke or just below Dick Van Dyke. He's not sympathetic. He's famous. No. He's rich but not wealthy.
Yes.
But he has money. He murdered just to get more money.
Mm-hmm.
He then wanted to murder a student that he seduced, who was an accomplice to murder.
And he seduced her really solely for this plot, right?
Yeah.
That's the feeling I got. It wasn't any other.
There was no. This was definitely not a prescription murder where he might have fallen in love with her. This was absolutely, he needed somebody as an accomplice. You know, I mean, he could have gotten a male student and bribed him with money. He didn't have to seduce a student to get her to do that. You know, there were so many other ways he could have gone. He didn't have to kill her at all, except to tie up loose ends.
Yeah.
You know, he could have waited until later.
So you make a good argument. You make a good argument for him to be very not sympathetic at all, and you make a good argument for him on that sort of spectrum to fall closer to the Dick Van Dyke. I find Dick Van Dyke just so ruthless.
Yeah.
So I put him.
Well, again, that's why I'm.
Yeah,
I was just going to say.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. That's why I put him. Well, look, it's a reason why it's a scale up to Dick Van Dyke, not up to Ross Martin. You know, so there's no question that he will always be the worst. So the question is, I would put him. If there was a 3/4 mark, I would say he's easily above 3/4 of the way to Dick Van Dyke. I put him pretty high up as a pretty terrible murderer.
I put him I'm a little more sympathetic for him only because if I'm just looking at the ruthlessness of how he murdered his accomplice was rough. That was rough because he did wait for her to turn around to look at him lovingly, and then he hit her with the boulder. So that wasn't great. But the uncle killing was fast in terms of it was for money, but it's also for, hey, you know, I built your fortune or I improved your fortune significantly, and you're leaving all of it to this idiot who you divorced, who you don't even like. And she, by the way, is no prize. If you recall, the reason that she got divorced from him is she was having affairs.
Yes.
She was a party animal. Yeah. He was boring and worked too much. He made too much money, so he was boring. Right. So she's kind of the worst too.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know,
I would have made him more sympathetic if he killed her and framed his uncle, to be honest.
Fair. Okay. You know what? Then I'm on board with that. Let's rewrite this episode. Let's bring everybody back. Because so in terms of his motive, I don't think it was purely money. I think when he tore apart that house, he was mad. I think that was personal. I know he was trying to set a scene, but I think, you know, again, if you put yourself in his position where you come from money, you come from a family of wealth, and you're not getting it.
Right.
You know, because some wealthy families do that where they want the offspring to be self-made. So he comes from a family of wealth. He's not getting any of it. He is self-made in that he did go to school and build a career. He is an expert. He's a wildly famous, popular art critic. He helps build the very fortune that is being left to someone who is going to just donate it to some museum. So I put him a little bit more sympathetic. If you're right, if he didn't murder his accomplice in the fashion that he did, I would put him less than 3/4 of the way. But I'll land squarely 3/4 towards Dick Van Dyke because he waited for his lover to turn around to hit her in the face with a rock. So that's not me.
I think that's fair. You know what, I could even rest it at the 3/4 mark because you also had some fairly compelling arguments. Again, if we're treating it as far as sympathy versus vicious meter, if it's sympathy, I could see from his point of view, he kind of thought that his world was ending because once they went into museums, then basically he had nothing left. He had nothing else. But on the other hand, it wasn't his. So, and he also murdered his uncle, murdered his accomplice, and was going to frame a completely worthless person who wouldn't have lasted 10 seconds in jail. So that's why. But I think 3/4 is fair. I think we can agree on that one.
Good.
So now the question is, will it hold up in court?
Tell me, Doctor, how do you catch a man like that?
You don't.
You're probably right.
Going first on this one, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that a good lawyer is going to have a very difficult time explaining why a homicide lieutenant's fingerprints are on stolen property from a murder scene that were touched at the killer's house. I don't see him getting out of that.
I think it would hold up in court. I think that a defense attorney could poke holes in that, just going the whole police are incompetent, labs get messed up, it's his word against mine that he shoved his hand in that portfolio. I think he was at the scene where they were dusting for fingerprints. So I think that there's holes to be placed. I think if you look at the totality of, I think the motive kills him.
Right.
I think that, and a jury is like a motive. So if it actually even got to jury, juries do like, even though it's not required, juries like a motive.
Right.
I think it would overall hold up in court because aside from that evidence, there's also a lot of other evidence. Yeah. And also what happened to that art student. You know, yes. I mean, you can't just, his accomplice, like, you can't just ignore that. And I would say that this would hold up in court.
Yeah, I think it's one of the few. In fact, let's see. So far, there's been Murder by the Book, Death Lends a Hand. Mm-hmm. I think it's the one that maybe most solidly ends up in court. Although I do think Death Lends a Hand would also hold up too. But this one in particular, yeah, I think he's got him pretty dead to rights here.
Agreed.
All right. So then let's just say thank you for listening to Rumpled Trench Coat.
Wait. I have one more thing.
Oh, all right.
So one more thing, for real. One more thing. This was such a cool fact I learned, that in this episode featured is a painting that showed up in the very first Columbo episode, which was Prescription Murder. There was a painting in the party scene of that episode where there were white houses with red roofs, and it's featured again in this episode. So that painting showed up twice, yeah.
So someone kept it in the prop department, and they used it again. That's pretty cool.
I kind of love it. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this episode.
One more thing, Annie. I have one more thing. The actress Roseanne Hoffman, the character was Tracy O'Connor. She was actually married to Richard Levinson, of Levinson and Link, the two creators and writers of the show, and they had gotten married just about 3 years before this episode. So not only was she an excellent accomplice, but he also got to murder her brutally on film.
Did they stay married? Do you know if they got divorced?
It didn't say. It said they got married, and it never said they got divorced. So I'm going to give them a happy ending here and say that they stayed married for the rest of his life. I tried to look that up, but they didn't have very much about that.
She did a great job. She was a good actress. She did a very good job. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. So anyway, this has been Rumpled Trench Coat, a Columbo podcast, and I'm Rich Nocella.
I'm Adrienne Nocella.
And until next time, don't iron those trench coats.
Rich.
Yeah.
That was terrible. Please don't do that. You've just embarrassed everybody.
We still haven't got a good last line here. But you know what? We'll work on that for next time.
Trench coat.
Yeah. Well, I should have said press first of all. So right off the bat, I'm stupid. If anything, you'd put it in a press or dry clean it. Anyway, see you next time, folks. Goodbye.
Goodbye.